welcome back to the Counter Narrative, where we explore deeper stories behind the headlines and challenge misconceptions. I am Rehanat Ojoba, and I'm never here alone. I have here with me the incredible, amazing, beautiful Tiara Oluwabukumi Fadeyi. Hey, girl.
It's so nice to be here. It's so nice to talk to you again, to be on another episode again. And today, we're not alone, of course. We're delighted to have Gabrielle Blair with us. Gabrielle is not only an accomplished author and the mind behind the bestseller, Ejaculate Responsibly, a whole new way to think about abortion, but also the founder of Design Mom and the Alt Summit Conference. It's a delight to have you here, Gabrielle.
I am so happy to be here. Really looking forward to our conversation.
Yes, we are. But before we go into the conversation, I like that you're showing us love already because I can see love on your blog.
Yes,
so tell us that you love us. Tell us explicitly that you love myself and Sarah. I want to hear it. Yeah.
I love you both so much. I'm so excited to talk with you.
I love you. We love you right back.
How is France today, Gabrielle?
Oh, France is beautiful today. Paris is always gorgeous.
Oh, have you ever been to Paris?
Why do you want to expose me on this podcast? I don't understand.
Okay, when you put it like that, I take back my question, but do not ask me if I've been to France before. Don't. All right, Gabrielle, welcome again to the Counter Narrative podcast. We're ready to jump right into we're ready to eat you, to show you some love.
We're ready to delve into the conversation.
Yeah, oh, yes. We're ready to delve right into the conversation.
Every time we use delve, we think of Delve Gate on Twitter.
Oh, okay.
Yes, we're going to be doing a lot of delving today. All right, guys. Just like Tiara said, Gabrielle Blair is the author of Ejaculate Responsibly, a whole new way to think about abortion. Gabrielle, my first question to you. Could you debunk one myth each about parenting and reproduction that aren't backed by science?
Yes. One of the myths when I think about reproductive discussions, one of the big myths is that that women can predict their ovulation, that women know when they're going to ovulate. And this is just something that is taught basically to women across the world. The way it was taught to me is that I would be ovulating 2 weeks after the first day of my last period. So in different places it's taught different ways, but basically they said, hey, 2 weeks after your last period, that's when you're ovulating. But that's not actually true. What the science says, what the research says, is that even if women have a very regular cycle, like maybe they have a 28-day on the dot cycle, that even for those women, ovulation can happen anytime in a 10-day period, and it can change from month to month. So when you're trying to predict your own fertility, it's actually very difficult and really risky if you're trying to use that as your main birth control, because it can change every month. So that is one myth about reproductive health that I want people to understand. For parenting, there's a million parenting myths, but if you're trying to think of one related to reproductive health, I would just say that parents often have the idea that they don't need to talk to their kids about sex, that sex will be taught to them at school or by their friends or some other time. Or maybe a parent feels like if they have just explained the mechanics, like this is what the penis does, this is what the vagina does, they explain the basics, that they've done their job. And I think that's absolutely wrong. Parents need to talk to their kids about this in an age-appropriate way, in a fact-based way throughout their kids' lives. Kids need a lot of education about this in order to have a healthy sex life, a safe sex life, and just not have a lot of baggage around sex.
That's interesting. Very. That's interesting. I find myself saying when we talk about birth control, because one of my favorite topics to talk about, birth control and motherhood, and especially birth control, by the way, I say that, see, the female, this is what I say. I say the female reproductive system is crazy. It is tricky. And I say, especially when people say, oh, I vouch by this method of birth control. I know that I'm ovulating on this day. Oh, I know I'm safe on this day. I just look at them and I say, you don't even know your body. You're going to be shocked. You cannot predict. You cannot. Especially with the fact that every month your period comes with different symptoms. So now think you can predict what would happen the next time you can assume you're ovulating today, and it's just, you now think, oh, I'm safe today, I'm going to have safe sex. And what if it's that day that you're ovulating? You do not really know what is happening inside of you.
No.
And if there's anything you can do is to be careful. Especially if you're sexually active, you have to be very careful.
And it gets even, like, you guys are both young compared to me. I'm going to be 50 this year. And it gets worse as you get older. Like, your period becomes so unpredictable that you just have no idea, but you can still become pregnant. So it gets, anyway, it's just very unpredictable. And you have to be so careful, so careful.
Oof.
Wow.
Careful. Okay.
Okay. So you started your blog, Design Mom, to connect with other mothers. I think it was when you had your 5th child.
Yes.
Yes, so you started it to connect with other moms. How's that been for you? Like, how has the connection been? How have you been able to? I'm sure you get testimonials and stuff about how the. Yeah, so tell us all about that.
So this has been for a long time. I started Design Mom in 2006, so a long time ago, and I have talked to thousands and thousands and thousands of women in that time since then, and I mean, it just has made the biggest difference. I was a parent for 10 years before blogs were kind of a thing, before like mom blogs existed. And then I got to experience parenting after I'd started the blog. And it was so much better after, because you had women to talk to. And I think so often we are, like, parents are told, and especially mothers, that we're supposed to sort of parent in isolation, that like it's just supposed to be you at home with your kid and everything is on your shoulders, and really you feel like the things you're going through, that you're all alone, that maybe you're the only one experiencing it, when you're like lose your patience or feel angry or feel like maybe you're not getting any validation. And when blogging came around, suddenly you could hear from so many mothers that were talking about their experiences and really understand that you weren't alone. So I think, and then blogging, of course, turned into Instagram, and it turned into now TikTok and other platforms as well. But I think it's been a really amazing thing that we've been able to actually hear the stories of mothers from the mothers, where before any of this social media and before blogs, you were really only hearing about mothers from maybe people who were writing about motherhood, that were fathers writing about motherhood, or, like, we weren't really hearing from the mothers. So I think it's been amazing.
I'm a mom myself. I have a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I like
Wonderful.
this. I like this conversation we're having as regards the parenting. And you mentioned something about parenting in isolation. So many people had no idea what parenting was all about. I felt like it was, it's like someone that cannot swim and you just get thrown into a pool and you have to survive or try not to drown, and I think that I'm going to link it to the Me Too movement. A mom who has no idea, who's been suffering in silence, for example, or dealing with stuff she cannot share, just maybe she's able to breathe and says, oh my God, this is happening. And then you find other women sharing same experience. I remember when I just had my child, my advocacy became louder after I had my first child. Actually, I remember saying things like, "Oh, after I had my child, I started to queef." Then I said things like, "Oh, I felt like my vagina expanded because I was having. I'm a sexually active mom person. And I became a child, and I could feel that the way that the penis fitted into my vagina, that wasn't how it was after birth." I was able to say this, and other moms were like, "Oh, it's not just you," and we're able to come to an agreement that childbirth, vaginal delivery, it actually does something to the vagina. Yes, it goes back, but it may not go back to how it was before the baby came out. And there's a lot of Me Too's, women saying it's not just you, I'm experiencing this, I'm experiencing that. It is nature. And that's the beauty of community, the beauty of sisterhood, the beauty of coming together. So thank you for the incredible work you're doing, because sometimes it feels like you're losing your mind. Tara, I don't know if you remember the other day, a mom said that her baby fell from the bed and she felt horrible. She was crying.
Yes.
And if you had seen the responses on that thread, I'm sure that she would really hug herself knowing that she wasn't alone. Everyone responded to say, see, our babies have fallen.
Yes.
My baby
Yes.
fell.
Yes.
You will be breastfeeding, you would sleep off, you meet your baby on the floor.
Yes. Yes.
It's not new. And she felt warmth, she felt comfort.
Yes.
It felt like a community of Me Too moms. So thank you for the incredible work that you do. This is very personal to me because I'm a mom. So thank you, Gabrielle. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yes, no one should parent so the summary is no one should parent in isolation.
I agree. It's just so much healthier for everyone, for the children, for the parents, to have support and have a community.
Yes.
Yes. So you're a mother of 6 and the author of the book Ejaculate Responsibly, a whole new way to think about abortion. How often do these two facts cause raised eyebrows with people?
It does make people laugh because they'll say, if you have 6 kids, then perhaps you don't know anything about responsible ejaculation. But I will say, I am a big fan of birth control because I did get to choose when I wanted to be pregnant. And I know not everyone would choose to have 6 kids, but I come from a big family. My husband also from a big family, and we knew we wanted lots of kids. And but I got to choose when it was right for me to have a baby. And so really, I think my husband is very good at ejaculating responsibly because we got to choose when we wanted to have a child.
Oh, okay.
So
When you talk to people and they say, "Oh, you don't know anything about abortion because you have 6 kids," how do you react to them?
I mean, I feel like I became much more of a pro-choice advocate, of an abortion accessibility advocate after I had my first baby, or after I was experiencing pregnancy for the first time. I found pregnancy incredibly difficult, just incredibly difficult. I would get very sick the whole time. I just really struggled. And I remember thinking, and then of course childbirth was traumatic and difficult. And I had what would be called easy childbirths. Like nothing went wrong. There were no big injuries, but I still found them very difficult. And I just remember thinking so clearly, if you do not desperately want to be pregnant, I would not wish this on anyone. If you did not choose this and really want this, it is not fair to ask anyone to go through this. It is so hard on your body. It is so hard on your mental health. And if you didn't want to be there, if you're not actively choosing this pregnancy, then I feel like women should have the right to opt out. So for me, it's true, I've never had an abortion, but I believe that women should be able to get an abortion if they need one, period. If they need or want one, they can decide. And I think women in general really try hard to do the work of pregnancy prevention, and that women are already preventing millions and millions of unwanted pregnancies every year. So when they aren't able to do that for whatever reason, maybe they can't access birth control, maybe there's some coercion or abuse involved by their partner, we need to make sure they have an option to have an abortion if they want one. That's my take.
Wow. Yes. I think that's a powerful response, to be honest, and it's. Yeah, I can see your face, Ria.
Oh God! I'm very excited, Tiara, because I'm a mom, and if I have to amplify everything she said, we're not going to finish this conversation. But when I talk about how difficult pregnancy is, being a mom and everything, it's such a difficult thing to say. You know why I say so? Because you're met with feedback or criticism but you go on your own. It's hard, but you have to. So you have to be careful in dishing the advice, because they'll say, let me experience the hardness too. So I'm not saying do not have children. I'm just saying, Busola, you want to have a baby. This is what pregnancy was like for me. I don't know what it would happen to you. Then this is what childbirth is like. It took me being on my 4th method of birth control to find the one that works. from the 15 to 12 days periods to the migraines to the discomfort of pad. So birth control, pregnancy. I said it took 2 years for me to bond with my second child because the labor and delivery was excruciatingly painful. It took 2 years. I couldn't move past the pain. It was so painful. So when you have these conversations, like, it's from a place of care, actually. Like, oh, you want to do it, oh, I'm happy for you, love and life, but this is going to be what is going to, you're more likely to experience this, so something like that. It's just really hard to have these conversations.
I agree. I am so sorry to hear how difficult your second birth was. That's just, it's really, really hard. I feel like I can't even watch movies. I have to turn away when there's a childbirth scene because I'm like, I can't, it's still too traumatic. And my youngest is now 13 years old. It's been 13 years since I've had a delivery and I still am like, I can't, it's just too much. It's too much.
I remember I was telling my friend I was in traffic one day and I saw a woman, I saw people were trying to clear the road and I was in panic because I didn't know what was happening. Someone was hitting my car. Then I turned and I saw in Keke, I saw a woman holding the head of a baby. For like a month, I was seeing it. I couldn't. I every time I thought about it, I would shiver. I had 2 kids, but every time I thought of that woman, she held a baby's head. Obviously, they were very close to the hospital. But any time that I think about it, something happens to my body. I'm like, how do these things happen? And to think I am a mom, so I can imagine you 13 years, and when you think about it, you're like, no. Let's talk about your famous 2018 Twitter trend.
Let's talk.
We can't be talking about birth control, childbirth without talking about that.
I'm still quoting it till today.
Tiara. What inspired you to start that conversation? It is still relevant, I hope, and it will be relevant tomorrow and the day after and the days after. I think so many people felt very attacked. Because what do you mean by we're not ejaculating responsibly? So what inspired you to start that conversation, Gabrielle?
Yes. So that Twitter thread, which is still, if you need to find it, it's my pinned tweet. It has been since 2018.
Yes.
It still gets retweeted and shared every day. Yes. Like even 5 years later. It's just amazing. And I've written other viral things, but nothing has come close to this thread. So what inspired it was I was reading an article, I can't remember what it was, but an article about the number of abortions in America. And I don't remember what the number was, but it was like, oh, that was higher than I was expecting. And so I started thinking about, well, why would that be? And I felt like this light bulb go off in my head. And I was like, I know why there's more, because I was thinking, wouldn't these women, if they're going to go to the hospital and they need an abortion or go to their doctor's office, wouldn't they be able to go to the doctor's office to get birth control? So that's what at first my brain was thinking. And then I had this light bulb moment where I said, no, that's not how it works. I have used every kind of birth control because like you, they didn't always work for me. The side effects, I tried an IUD and just bled. Like it was just horrible. So many different things. I feel like I've tried them all. And I want to be clear, I'm still very grateful for birth control. Like I still think it's like a miracle. And I want to be clear, I'm very pro birth control, but it was challenging and every country it's different, but where I was living, I had to go get a doctor's appointment and it was hard to get a doctor's appointment. You had to wait for a month and because the doctor's office is too busy. And then I have all these kids. So now need to get babysitters for the kids and then having to get transportation there. And it's all very expensive. And then I have to go wait in line to get my pills. The whole thing is that's just getting the medicine. And then of course you have to take the medicine every day, even if you're not having sex. If we're talking about the pill, you're having to take the pill every day, even if your partner is traveling or if you're traveling. You have to think about this thing all the time and you have to deal with the side effects every day. And anyway, and so suddenly I could see there are a lot of reasons why a woman might not be able to be using birth control. Maybe she hasn't found one that works for her. Maybe she can't afford it. Maybe she can't get to the doctor. Maybe she just doesn't have access to it. Or birth controls can have complications. Like if you're taking other medications, they can make your birth control less effective. So there's a million. So I could just like see this. Oh, I can see why women might not be able to have birth control. And then I wrote a little essay about it, but I didn't know where to share it because it wasn't kind of the normal kind of content I would share and write about. And then Brett Kavanaugh, who is on the Supreme Court in the US, he was being vetted. Like they were asking him all the questions to see if he was worthy of being on the Supreme Court. By the way, he's not worthy in my opinion, but anyway, but I was watching them ask him questions and I was getting angrier and angrier. It was all of these politicians, it was just men, just asking him these questions about women's bodies. And it was so clear that none of them understood what was happening, like understood the topic of reproductive health care. They didn't understand abortion. They didn't understand birth control. They just didn't understand. And they didn't even care. They didn't even care. They just knew if they asked these questions, if they said these words, then they get the vote. It was just, I was so angry. And that's when I wrote the Twitter thread. It was my very first thread. I tweeted many times, but I never wrote a full thread. And it's way too long. It's 63 tweets. So that's like, you should never write 63 tweet threads, but I didn't know because it was my first time. Anyway, and it took off immediately. And I was getting called by newspapers and magazines, and it was like, I don't know, it just kind of blew people's minds. And so that was really, really exciting. And then ever since then, it's, as I mentioned, it's been shared and retweeted and commented on every single day since then.
Wow. Ooh. Wow. So it's, when you mentioned about the fact that men do not know anything about female reproductive system, but they are the ones making the laws. They are the ones who are very vocal about abortion debate. There was this story somebody shared on Twitter that a then boyfriend, because she had to break up with him, a then boyfriend was telling her that, can't she move her period to the month end?
Are you kidding me?
It was ridiculous.
It's really ridiculous.
No,
it's very, very ridiculous.
You can move it to the month end, and every woman gets their period at the end of the month. So these are the people who are making these laws. They don't know anything.
Right. I remember one man was talking to me, so people will argue with me on Twitter about what I wrote all the time, which is kind of fun for me. I'm like, I know all the answers and I'll get on and give answers. But one man thought that when women took the pill, they only took it right before they had sex that day. So if you have a headache and you take ibuprofen or something, they thought it was like that. And I was like, no, you have to take it every day or it doesn't work. And I'm like, why do you get to have an opinion about women's bodies when you don't even know this very basic information,
I'm really interested because we have time and I'm excited. I want to look at Tara. She said it here. Oh, I remember. Men don't love condoms. In fact, men frequently pressure women to have sex without a condom. And it's not unheard of for men to remove the condom during sex without the women's permission or knowledge. Yes. That's an entire conversation on its own.
All of that.
Yes.
But I think there was, I think what made that thread go off was your assertion. The first thing you said was men are 100% responsible for all unwanted pregnancies.
Right.
That was what.
So it was what do you mean by it is men?
So please tell us what you meant by it.
Yes. Okay. So basically, as you read the thread or as you read my book, it becomes clear. But basically, I say, look, women can't control your ovulation. It's unpredictable. We've already talked about that. But it's also involuntary. I can't decide to ovulate. I can't decide if my egg will be fertile or not. I have no control. But men are always in control of their fertility. If you're a fertile man, you're fertile, and you're fertile every day from puberty until death, even though your sperm does get crappier as you get older. But anyway, so men, not only do they always know when they're fertile, they don't have to guess, they also control their ejaculation. Yes, they absolutely lost their mind when I said that, but I maintain it is a biological fact. Here's the reality. Men are fertile every single day from puberty until death, and they know that they're fertile. There's not a question. They don't have to guess. If they're fertile, they're fertile. So women, of course, don't know when we're fertile. We've already talked about that it's unpredictable, but it's also involuntary. I don't get to choose when it happens. I don't get to control it. I don't get to control how long I'm fertile. Like, I don't have any control of that. But ejaculations are kind of the opposite of that. Men get to choose to ejaculate. They get to choose to release their sperm. And if we're talking about consensual sex, which is what we're talking about, no one is forcing them to put their sperm in someone's vagina. They are choosing to do that. So men have control of whether or not they choose to cause a pregnancy. And of course, people don't want to hear that. They want to hear, no, it's 50-50. But I have two things to say to that. One is, no, it's not 50-50. Right now in our world, women are expected to do all the work of pregnancy prevention, and men are expected to do none of the work. So that's not 50-50. But also, it shouldn't be 50-50. It should be 100-100. Men are 100% responsible for their bodies. Women are 100% responsible for their bodies. And women are already acting responsibly. They're already taking birth control, doing pregnancy prevention work. They're already preventing millions and millions and millions of unwanted pregnancies every year. We're just asking men to step up and do their part. Men have great options for birth control and for ejaculating responsibly. They have, and we can talk about those if you like.
And speaking of that, in your thread, you said, so there are men willing to risk getting a woman pregnant, which means literally risking her life, her health, her social status, her relationship, and her career. So they get to experience a few minutes of slightly more pleasure. Is that for real? Yes, it is. Yes, they are responsible. Yes, it is.
Right.
So women are taking on so much responsibilities already.
Right, because the reality is, women there are lots of forms of birth control for women, but the very easiest, most accessible, cheapest, safest, simplest birth control, and most convenient is condoms. They are again, easier, cheaper, safer, more convenient, more accessible than any woman's birth control. And instead of embracing them and encouraging men to learn how to use them, practice, figure out what works best for them, we just make fun of them or act like they're just the worst thing in the world. And I mean, really, we should be just cheering condoms on, because there is no hormonal birth control that will prevent sexually transmitted infections and diseases. Like, condoms are it. So I really feel like we should be cheering condoms on. And the good news is, condoms have improved. Like, you hear horror stories from like the 1970s and the condoms were just horrible, but they've gotten better and better. So now if you talk to men that use condoms regularly and they're like, okay, I took the time to like practice and figure out what size I like and what material I like and what kind of lubrication I like, that if they take the time to learn how to use it, they say sex with a condom or without a condom is fine. Like, it's not a big enough difference that they would ever risk their partner. So that's really good news. And I do want us to celebrate condoms and encourage men to use condoms. But the reality is, no man wants to hear from me about condoms. The random white middle-aged lady from America, like, no man wants to hear that from me, right? They want to hear it from other men. So I really need other men who are comfortable with condoms, who've learned how to use condoms, to spread the word, to talk to other men, to say, why would you ever have sex without a condom? Like, that's so like irresponsible. It's so cruel to this woman, and you're risking her body and her life. Like, what are you doing? Like, that's how it should be.
Wow. So I remember that you mentioned how when they started creating male contraceptives, about how men complain about one third of what women actually constantly go through when they use oral contraceptive, and it was discontinued. It wasn't approved. Why do you think it's so? I think it feels like the society is just so so happy, so comfortable with women bearing the brunt, bearing the burden, and in order to make things easier for men when it comes to taking responsibilities for something like that. So could you shed some light on that? Why do you think that is?
Yeah, you're exactly right. In the thread and in the book, I mentioned that we don't mind when if women suffer, as long as it makes things easier for men. Like, we will ignore women's suffering as long as it makes things easier for men. And it's very true. And around when we're talking about sex, it's especially true. We are taught, women are taught this, and men are taught this, that men's pleasure is the number one priority. Not in life in general, but especially in sex. Like, if someone, like if there's a movie we're watching and they're showing a sex scene, the sex scene is penetration. The man puts his penis in the vagina and then he has an orgasm, or he ejaculates. And that's the end of sex. That's sort of like how we define sex. The woman's pleasure, her orgasm, her experience isn't even in the definition. We just define the whole act of sex based on what the man is experiencing and on his pleasure. And we're all taught this. Every person is taught that this is what sex means. And of course, that's just wrong. It's wrong across the board. But it's just so deep in our culture that I can't even be angry that men think this, because women think this too. Like, we're all taught this, you know?
You know, speaking of men's pleasure being paramount, in conversations with ladies, with women, and you realize that so many women have actually never, ever orgasmed. And again, if you go further in the conversation, so many women get pleasure from their sex toys. And then there's the conversation of some sect of men getting angry. Wow, you have a sex toy when there's a man. There's that. But back to men's pleasure being paramount. So man and woman have engaged in consensual sex, and then the man ejaculates and he's like panting because, oh, the world has come down. It's panting. And then there's your woman there who probably hasn't even gotten to, Sarah, what's the word? You haven't even experienced half. And then there's a conversation of, because you've ejaculated, you feel fine, you feel satisfied, and you're happy. And then there's your woman there looking like, so what happens to me? Where is the satisfaction, orgasm, and pleasure? Then there's the, I'm a man. Once I ejaculate, my body cannot go like that. They make it sound like the moment they have ejaculated, they are good. But women are suffering. Women are not getting, they're not,
yes,
women hardly get pleasure from penetrative sex. I use the word penetrative sex because, like you said, it's just penetrative sex. No orgasm, no pleasure. You ejaculate and you're done. Is your woman satisfied? Is she satisfied? Did she orgasm? Did XYZ happen to her? You just leave her there and you go about your day and you're like, oh, I'm good in bed. I came after how many minutes? That's the brag, as against your woman actually deriving pleasure. What do you mean by your body cannot go multiple rounds? Honey, I'm not even close to satisfied. And this is from just one round. I'm not close to satisfied.
Yeah.
And the amount of pounding equates to satisfaction. I just, okay, you were in my vagina, okay, and so what? I do not feel pleasured. I do not feel, you know when you feel butterflies in your stomach from falling in love? Nothing happens to my vagina. I do not have that. Your vagina does this thing when you're happy. I don't know how to explain it. It tickles, sometimes it hardens. So many things happens to it. I didn't feel anything. You went in and you came out. Is that all you have to offer, my man? Nobody. Get back to work, but they do not care. But your husband has. And again, we can't talk about birthing without talking about pleasure as well. When so many women have children, it is, but you've had children, what do you want sex for? You need to keep your partners, your women, in a state of pleasure. Keep them satisfied. Touch them, do them, whatever. Engage their bodies. Come on, Gabrielle, say something. Tiara. I feel like it's not a me thing, you know. Women are suffering.
Not a me. It's not just you.
Women, based on the societal conditioning, as women, you can only get sex from, for example, in marriage, in that institution. The institution does not permit infidelity, right. So there's no way you can say, if I get this from my man, I can get this outside. Unlike where some men have the leverage to get, I hear of men, so men would say, oh, my wife does not give me a blowjob, I get it outside. How many women can say that confidently? So if you're not pleasuring your woman, where should she get pleasure from? That's the big question.
That's a huge question. And it just makes no sense, because if the men would take the time to learn how to pleasure their wife, they're going to get a lot more sex. If she thinks sex is fun, if she knows she's going to experience an orgasm because she loves sex because he does such a great job, they're just going to have more sex. Like, everyone wins.
They don't want to win.
No, they don't want women winning. They don't want women winning.
Just don't care.
They really feel a competition.
Yes, a lot of them do not just care. They don't want to know what works for you. As long as what, even when you tell them that, oh, this doesn't do it for me, they don't care. That's what they want to do. They still go ahead to do. So it's very crazy. So you mentioned something about condoms. Oh yeah, you want something, Gabrielle?
Yeah.
You want
say again? Oh, about condoms?
Oh yeah. So you mentioned something about condoms, about how they are very effective for protecting against unwanted pregnancies and STDs. And also in your thread, you mentioned that you spoke about pull-out, about how about how those two methods can help to ejaculate responsibly. But you find that a lot of men still do not practice it. What do you think is responsible for this?
I mean, the pull-out one is fascinating to me, because the statistics are really interesting. When you do it correctly, it's a 96% effective. That's really good. I mean, condoms are 98% effective when you use them correctly. So having the pull-out method be 96% effective is great. But the problem is, men don't learn to do it correctly. So like in real life, it's like only 76% effective instead of 96, which is not obviously nearly as good. And so it's just like, you guys, you have this built-in birth control. If you really hate condoms, you have this built-in birth control, and you still won't learn how to use it correctly. Like, you still won't practice. It makes no sense, because then they don't even really have to I think they don't want to reduce their pleasure. Again, we think we've been taught that their pleasure is the most important. So if they have to pull out and have their orgasm against their partner's stomach, or in their hand instead of like in her vagina, and they feel like, well, that might be slightly less pleasurable, they won't choose it. And you're going, do you understand the equation, the math you're doing in your head there? You're saying, my few seconds of a little bit more pleasure, I mean, it will still be pleasurable against her stomach, but my few seconds of a slightly more pleasure is more important than her whole life. Like, that is what is happening there. It is insane.
It's so insane, because again, in conversations when we talk about speaking of, I want to buttress what you said about reducing their pleasure. We find grown men shaming other responsible men who have undergone a vasectomy. They shame them, they actually come together to shame them, Gabrielle. And then I look at this man and I'm like, do you know what it is to say to your wife that, you know what, the burden of birth control, I will take it. You rest, because aside from being on birth control, there's so many things that women do, physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, all the LLYs, raising and caring for a home. So a man has decided to get a vasectomy, and there is you wouldn't wear a condom, and then you're shaming another man that's gone through a vasectomy. What exactly is the problem with the man who's fair? Because there's no other explanation. And you say that, oh, you guys get bullied. I realize that men bully men more than other people. Women do not bully men as much as men bully men. They bully, exactly. They always shame them. Like, you go a vasectomy, your wife is controlling you. How will you perform? I'm like, are you educated? I'm sorry. What are you saying?
Right.
We talk about the side effects of birth control. I've not seen any birth control that does not have a side effect. It took me the fourth method to get the one that works for my body, and you're shaming a man that underwent a vasectomy.
Yeah, a simple, easy procedure, 15 minutes. They can drive themselves home or walk home after. It's not a big deal, and it's. I don't know. I'm a huge fan of vasectomies, and I hate that men shame other men about that. I think it's horrible, because if you talk to any doctors about it, they're like, no, they're great. They don't change your performance. They're terrific. I don't know. It's really, really frustrating. I feel like we see the same mindset with condoms, where men feel like they are the winner if they can convince a woman to have sex without a condom. They feel like it's a challenge. Oh, can I intimidate her so she won't ask for a condom? What? It makes no sense. You're not more manly if you ejaculate irresponsibly. You're less manly. You are less manly
if you ejaculate irresponsibly.
Yes.
You are less manly.
Yes.
You are.
Yes.
Yeah, you are less manly if you ejaculate responsibly.
Yes.
Oh my, this conversation is there's a whole lot in real life because yes.
So
because how dare you? Because it's like you should be happy that your husband, your partner wants to have sex with you and you are there saying wear a condom. How dare you? Do you know how many women are begging me outside to sleep with them?
Yeah.
That's what it looks like. That's like the descriptive analogy. You are, and then there's a conversation where they will threaten you. If you don't do it, another woman will leave my side. And what other choices do these women have?
Right.
They have no other choice than to do their bidding.
Yeah.
And we can't talk about birth control, childbirth, motherhood without talking about abortions. And how do you personally define abortion, and what scientific evidence supports your definition, Gabrielle?
Well, my definition of abortion is a woman choosing to end a pregnancy for any reason. And scientific evidence for that, I think is pretty. I don't know what we're looking there as far as I'm not sure what you're looking for as far as scientific evidence, but I don't think we need scientific evidence for it. If a woman says, I don't want to be pregnant, she has her reasons. I do believe there's something like a mother's intuition, like an instinct, right? And if a pregnant woman is like, my instinct is that now is not a good time to have a baby, I believe her. I believe that's her mother's intuition telling her, yeah, don't have a baby. Either the baby won't thrive or you won't thrive as a mother, or, it's not a good time to have a baby. So if her body is telling her, don't have a baby, I believe her. Who else would know better than her?
Nobody.
No one.
I remember after having my first child, when I went to get birth control, I was there and there was this woman and she was like, oh, she didn't know which one to take. I was also new at it. I was just there. I was like, oh, we're just rubbing minds. And I'm like, oh, I said I was going to get the one in the implanon. And she said, oh, that she couldn't get it, that her husband likes to touch her body. What if he feels it? I'm like, how about the IUD? She's like, oh, that he's likely to see it. And I'm like, you're not going to live here without any. I was being a woman's woman, and I said, how about you take the depot shot? If you get injected and you come to the hospital every 3 months, he cannot touch your body and know that you got an injection. Right. He can't feel any signs of you being a birth control. And if he's saying things like, oh, why is the baby not coming? You are protecting yourself. You could just keep saying, oh, I don't know why. Maybe it's I'm sorry, but it's really not easy as a mom who takes care of a household and children and all of the work, domestic and childcare. When you're ready, you're ready. And when you're not ready, you're not ready. So I agree with what you're saying, Gabrielle. I would hold you to your words. You want to have a baby. And like you said, it's not just about being ready to have the baby. You as the mother, will you be fine as well? The mother also matters in this as well. You want to have a baby, we're with you. You do not want to have a baby, we are with you. Do it at your own pace, at your own time, not at the society's time. Like I always tell women, I know it might be hard, especially in the society we are in, have the amount of children that you desire. It can be hard with the kind of pressure people go through. But you're absolutely correct, and I agree with what you said as well.
Yes, and I think it's one that first mentioned this. A lot of people think or say like that their words against abortion or their thoughts against abortion is that it is murder. They say it is murder. Say that, yes. So when they say that, do you like what's your thought on that? Do you think abortion is murder?
I don't think abortion is murder. I am a religious person, and every religion teaches things differently. And in my religion, a child isn't a child until they're born, till like they're born fully formed. They can live and they can breathe, and then it's a child. And before that, it's not. And so for me, I don't see it as murder at all. I especially don't because if you look at the statistics, the vast majority of abortions happen very, very early. This is just like a few cells. And I mean, it's really not recognizable as human in any way. And I also don't think it's murder because like they say 25 to 30%, they're not even sure. Sometimes say as much as 50% of pregnancies end in miscarriage. Mm-hmm. And this is like a lot of pregnancies don't finish, and we don't think of that as murder. We don't say, oh, God is murdering these babies every time there's a miscarriage. But a miscarriage and an abortion look identical. Like these days, to get an abortion, you take a pill and you basically have a heavy period. It's a miscarriage, and we don't think of miscarriages as murder, and I don't think we need to think of abortions as murder. It doesn't help the conversation. It doesn't reduce the number of abortions by yelling at women and telling them they're murderers. We don't have less abortion because of that. There are two things that reduce abortion that have been proven. There's only two things. One is free and accessible birth control. If you make birth control, all forms, vasectomies, condoms for men, but also all the women's options, if those are free and accessible, that reduces abortion. The other thing, fact-based sex ed all throughout a kid's life. Like those are the things that reduce abortion. Everything else, you might reduce one here, one there, but nothing reduces it in a significant way except those two things. That's it.
Yes, that's very important. So with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, we've seen a shift in the reproductive rights of women. Do you see anything changing soon?
Honestly, it's been really interesting. It's the election year in the U.S., so of course we're all watching it closely. Abortion is on the ballot in each state. Like people are talking about abortion, and the overwhelming majority of Americans are making very clear they want to see legal, safe abortion. Like they want to keep abortion legal and safe. That is actually a very small minority that is fighting against this. So, I mean, that's good news as far as like, that's great that most people are on board with legal, safe abortion. The bad news is we're still having to fight so hard for it. There are many predictions that if Trump is elected, that there will be a nationwide ban on abortion in the U.S. And I mean, that's just horrific to think about. The bans that have happened already have killed so many women, have or ruined their fertility or put their life at risk. It's been really, really dangerous because doctors don't feel like they can even help a woman who's pregnant, even if she's not having an abortion, even if she's just having a miscarriage. They feel like they're not allowed to help her because they could go to jail because it would look like he's helping her have an abortion. It's really, really dangerous right now. So the bad news is that it's really, really dangerous. Is it getting better? I hope so. People are angry about this. Women are angry, but so are men. Like people are really angry about the changes that have happened since Roe v. Wade. So if I can be positive, it's that good. Let's use that anger and fix things.
If we had more. When we talk about women in leadership spaces, myself and Tiara, another feminist, talk about it. What do we say, Tiara? We say it's not only for women to be in leadership spaces. We were feminist women because
yes.
I know myself and Gabrielle are having conversation. I'm like, oh, Gabrielle, it took me being on my first method of birth control to really find the one that works for me. This is what I'm going through with my children and work. So you're putting in laws in place. So maybe model penalty would not exist. Women really have it easy in the workforce, maybe paid maternity leave for a year or two in countries that really work. And our sexual and reproductive rights do not have to be something we have to fight for daily because it is exhausting. I remember one time I mentioned how, because when I was on birth control, because of earlier in a conversation I said that the female reproductive system is tricky. Even whilst on birth control, sometimes when I have some type of sex, I still take extra pills. I'm always guiding, I'm always very afraid. And I remember one night, was it during COVID? I don't remember. when I was taking a break from birth control, because I always bleed from 12 to 15 days in a month. I was taking a break, so I had sex that night. Then I went to a pharmacist and I'd asked for what's that drug, Tiara? Postinol. And the lady at the pharmacist lady was like, oh, sorry that she doesn't sell. I'm like, oh, why? And she's like, oh, she believes that if a man and woman has come together, something has formed, and she cannot be part of the reason it's what's the word she used? It has formed, that she does not want to. What's the word? She doesn't want to undo it. You know, I was so angry because you don't know. I was angry because one, I kept thinking in my head, you are depriving me of having access to birth control. And I was thinking, imagine my father raped me. Imagine it was a robber. I had all of these scenarios in my head. And I'm like, you know what? Not only should we have women, we also want feminist women in these spaces, in healthcare, in all sectors where women's lives are likely to be at risk and in danger. Because what do you mean that you were not going to sell to me? If I met Tiara, she probably, and then I know you will not ask me, are you married? Because I do not think they ask boys if they are married when they go to buy condoms.
No.
You will just tell me the pill and you will just collect the money and just go to my house. Why are you asking? What do you mean?
That person cannot make it a business like that, because if you are...
Do you understand? You don't do that to women and girls. It could have been anything. And we really need conscious people in the space to take up all of these spaces for women's lives to be easier, honestly.
Yes.
Yeah, and my chat is that it doesn't even have to be so. When people make debates, when people make arguments for abortion and pills, people go, oh, what if I was raped? What if... It doesn't even have to get there. You just want to... Exactly. You just want to... You should be able to be provided with it. Like, that's all. Abortion right is literally human right. It's health. It's not. So it's just always it's.
Do you know? There's something that I do. The more I became when I was on birth control, I grew more confident. Whenever I go to buy these pills in the pharmacist, I buy it and I buy water and I use it there. I'm like, you're not going to shame me. You don't need to know if I'm married, I'm young, I'm single. I buy it and I use it there. Then when I started taking the daily pills, that was my fourth method. I set my alarm for 8 p.m. So I always forget. Yeah. So I now thought to myself, what time would I always be with my phone? So I set it to 10 a.m. Every 10 a.m. I'm at work. So I told all my colleagues, my colleagues in front of me, I'm like, at 10 a.m. I take my birth control pills. I don't want to get pregnant. Again, it takes a village.
That is amazing.
When they hear the alarm, I'll be like, Rihanna, your medicine. Everybody. From twins. Everyone wanted me to take my pills because I let them know how important it was. This is my own saving grace. This is what I'm doing to ensure I do not get pregnant. So everyone always reminded me to take my pills, because sometimes you can leave your phone and you're chatting with a friend. It took the entire village. So when I was not on birth control, they were like, Rihanna, what happened? We don't hear the alarm anymore. I'm like, oh, that my body is resting from the pills. Because it's really important. We have to surround ourselves with people that really understand our struggles and all of that. And that's the beauty of community again.
Yes.
So I'm glad we're having this conversation.
It's an important conversation.
It is important because and the thing is, I feel like sometimes when I think about these things, I think women if we're being honest, I believe that we are on our own, because I do not think that men would truly grasp. Just yesterday, somebody was saying that men also experience postpartum depression or something. I'm like, you know what? There's no point anymore trying to make someone understand. And what? I'm speechless. Where do we even go from there? We're trying to say that women are stressed, they are sleep deprived, help your partners. We shouldn't be saying that, and then you're saying men go through it too.
Do they carry the baby?
And we're like, if you could.
Does their body go?
And I'm like, where do we go from here? Where do we go from here?
Really
exactly. What are we saying? What are you saying?
Move on.
You're not doing enough.
So, Gabrielle, you are
so since we're on our own, we keep doing the advocacy, we keep holding on to ourselves and creating solutions to make our lives easier.
I think that's one of the reasons why it popped that way. That's one of the reasons why till today it's still relevant. It was it was very, I'm kind of short of words now, because when I read it, my brain, you're like, I saw like my, that emoji where your brain is like there's flames or there's
Yes.
my mind was blown. So could you tell our listeners what your solution in the thread and in your book was to end this abortion debate? I think you mentioned it earlier about sex education. Yes. So could you?
Yes. Could you well, I'm not even sure which thing you're referring to, because I know the thread was long and I said a few things. But one of the things I said is, if you really are anti-abortion, like if you really, really cared about getting rid of abortion, then why not give a vasectomy to every 12-year-old boy and then reverse it when he's an adult, if his partner and he decide they want to have a baby? And I said this, I was definitely being obnoxious. Like I definitely was being obnoxious, because I know no mother would choose that. No one would choose that. I understand. But just to try and point out that people are so willing to do things to women's bodies, to control women's bodies, make laws about women's bodies, but no one would ever make a law about giving vasectomies, a very safe, easy procedure. They would never suggest that for boys' bodies, even though they're totally fine for girls to use birth control and deal with the side effects and all of that from a young age. So that was one of the things. And I was saying that more obnoxiously. In reality, the solutions I want are the ones I've already mentioned. Like, I want to see free and accessible birth control. I want men to be embracing vasectomies and condoms. I want men to think about their sperm as like a dangerous fluid. Like, I could hurt someone with my sperm. I could risk her life. I could risk her job, her social status. Like, I should be so careful with my sperm. I want that. I want that if someone suggested to a man that they have sex without a condom, that he would go, what? Why would I do that? That's so dangerous. It's dangerous for me. It's dangerous for you. I would never do that. Like, that's what I want to see happen. And some of that comes back to education. If we're teaching kids about sex ed, and we're teaching boys and girls that, hey, do you know sperm causes pregnancy? These sperm are always fertile. Every time he ejaculates, he's fertile. We don't teach that, but that would help a ton. The reality is, most of the time when a woman has sex, she can't become pregnant. Her egg is only fertile 12 to 24 hours each month. So most of the time when she has sex, she cannot become pregnant. But every time a man has sex, every time, he can potentially impregnate someone. So we are so focused on women's bodies, controlling women's bodies. And why don't we just shift some of that focus over to men and think about what men can do to prevent pregnancy?
The part about the sex education, how people need to actually learn, because you see a lot of people, grown-ups, they're out there, they'll make some conversations and you'll be like, why don't you know the first thing about your body, about the human body? And they have a lot to say in their ignorance. So I think it's very important for us to make sex education compulsory for, like, even in the school curriculum, because I know that some parents, they fight against this because they think it exposes their children to early sex. But what it does is it protects them. They have knowledge.
It protects them. You're exactly right. It protects them.
When you have knowledge about something, if you have knowledge about snakes, or you know where snakes are, you know never to go there. You know when you're going to a place where snakes are, you know how to navigate it so that you do not get bitten by snakes. So it just makes sense that we should focus on educating young people from when they are small, from adolescents. Educate them about these things, so that when they grow up, they'll not grow up to be saying, don't your period start every month, or it's not every woman gets their period at the end of the month. They will not be able to say that. Because they have so, and they'll be able to practice safe sex, and we'll be able to reduce the whole abortion thing that has so many people upset. So thank you so much for that thread and for the thank you for the thread and for the book.
Thank you for having me. I really, really enjoyed this discussion. I appreciate it so much. I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Thank you so much.
We still have one final question for you.
Oh, one more final question. Okay, great.
Yes. So Finally, what advice would you give our listeners about managing their sexual and reproductive health?
Okay, so what I want your listeners to do, if they're women, I want the women to take responsibility for their bodies. They probably already are, but I want them to continue to take responsibility for their bodies. If the listeners are men, I want you to start taking responsibility for your bodies. Right now, you probably aren't. Men expect women to be responsible for women's bodies and for men's bodies. They will say, she could have just insisted I wear a condom. If you say that, you're saying she has to be responsible for her body and for your body. Like, it's not okay. Why don't you show up with the condoms? Figure out which condoms you like. You show up with the condoms. Do not even let her even bring them up. You can just take care of it. That's what we need to see from men. And if you don't like condoms, go get a vasectomy. You have options.
And if you do not like vasectomy and condom, be celibate. And while you're being celibate, do not touch women. Do not harass women, because that's what the incel community is all about. They're so angry, and then they start to attack women violently. So exactly. Close your legs. Close your legs. Close your legs. Close your legs. We're repeating ourselves again on air, and we'll do it on air. Yeah, celibacy is also a method of birth control, but somehow it's like nobody wants to practice celibacy. Why can't you? Oh,
right.
Thank you so much, Gabrielle. Thank you for sharing your insights and sparkling such important dialogue through your work.
Once again,
sparking, Gabrielle. I said sparkling. I don't know what I'm thinking.
Thank you for that thread.
Thank you for sparking such important dialogue through your work.
I loved this interview. I love the both of you. I love your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And to our listeners,
thank you. It was a delight to have you.
Yeah.
You too.
And to our listeners, we hope today's episode has been eye-opening. You've learned a lot about how to practice safe sex, how to reduce the abortion rate, and how to be better humans. Actually, we hope that you've learned a lot from it, and we hope that you take responsibility for your sexual and reproductive rights and health with this conversation we've had today. And don't forget to subscribe.
Also, do not. Oh yeah, good, Tiara. Go,
subscribe and rate us and follow us on social media. On Instagram, we're at the Counter Narrative Podcast. On Twitter, we're at the CN_podcast. And on TikTok, we have fun videos on TikTok, so you can follow us at the Counter Narrative Podcast. Thank you so much.
One more thing before we go, Tiara. Most importantly for today's episode, to the men, ejaculate how, Tiara? Ejaculate responsibly.
Ejaculate responsibly.
We want you to say that for our listeners, Gabrielle.
Ejaculate responsibly.
Yes.
Ejaculate responsibly.
And ejaculate responsibly. Thank you, and have a wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.